Here we go. Got you the link. And then I'm just going to drop this in the SVM community chat channel for everybody.
Yeah, I'll do the same.
Cool.
I'm actually also online, by the way.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I think, all right, yeah, we're good to go here. So everybody tuning in, welcome to Everything SVM. I'm here with Mr. Jack Levin from XEN. We'll get into talking more about what they're building in a second, but before I do that, I just want to thank our sponsor, Mantis. They're now an official sponsor of the Index podcast and the Everything SVM live stream. If you're a developer or just into DeFi, you want to pay attention to Mantis. They enable trust minimized transactions across different chains, letting you trade or execute actions seamlessly while getting the best possible outcome, all without the usual complexity. Like I said, they're an official sponsor. You can find them at mantis.app and follow them at Mantis on X. Jack, thanks so much for being here. We got the chance to catch up a couple weeks back, and your story's pretty incredible. Do you want to maybe just tell people a little bit about who you are and why you're here building in this space, and then we'll kind of get into what XEN is?
Yeah, sure. So definitely got into the space, I would say mostly by accident. And when I say the space, just into the crypto world itself. So I learned about Bitcoin in 2011 from my former Google buddies. We actually had lunch, and somebody was making jokes that you can use Bitcoin to buy bazookas and do other crazy things. And back in 2011, I was running this company called ImageShack, and I still run it. It's still live and functioning. But I had a number of data centers that I figured I could use the excess power off to launch mining operation. And so I started to mine Bitcoin with GPUs from 2011 for about 2.5 years, maybe 3 years, I actually forget. And I joined the Bitcoin Talk.org, and I'm still like a member there, like junior member or something like that. I don't post a lot, but it was a cool experience to get into proof of work mining. And moving forward, in like basically a couple of years ago, we launched the project on Ethereum, and actually within the Ethereum ecosystem, we call the project XEN. And XEN, XEN, is basically modeled after proof of work with Bitcoin, but except it's using a smart contract where you get to choose how long you should be waiting until you get your tokens, and also based on how much gas you pay, you can actually get more tokens on the initial investment. So if you look at it from a traditional finance, it almost represents a model of tokenizing the block space plus how much you have paid for the block space. So like specifically when the gas is low, you can get a start on your minting and mining operation for XEN relatively cheap. And then if you're willing to wait, let's say 400 days, then you can end up with a lot more tokens that are fairly minted. And when I say fairly minted, the contract dropped 2022, October 8th. There was no pre-mine, pre-mint, no admin keys. The contract is fully immutable. It follows first principles of crypto. And if you get into it, you basically compete with the rest of the people out there for the allocation that the contract basically prints for you or mints for you, which is very similar to Bitcoin. So with Bitcoin, you have difficulty of the network, plus you also have the expense of electricity. So that's the Bitcoin's configuration proof of work. With XEN on Ethereum, you have your gas costs, which is basically electricity, or the difficulty of getting into the system by paying either, medium amount of dollars, or you obviously pay with ETH. And the ETH you pay for gas obviously gets burned, so it's actually very, very healthy for Ethereum because it burns a lot of ETH, and you get this XEN derivative at the end of your minting period. And you also specify the minting time, like how long your minter is basically functioning. And you can go as short as a single day or as long as like 500 days. And so you compete with other people to get into the system at the lowest possible gas, where GUI is the lowest. And if you're lucky, like last weekend, I think the GUI was 0.5, and now it's 2.5. But during the bull cycle, it goes up to 100. I would say on average it's about 50. So you can imagine you can basically get into the production of Zen at very, very low cost, like 100 times less or 10 times less, based on the time of the day. And after we launched Zen on Ethereum, we actually saw that it got quite popular. It pushed the gas cost for pretty much everybody on Ethereum, and it exposed Ethereum's weakness, obviously, because Ethereum has this thing. It's based on Nakamoto consensus, where every block is sequential, and the execution of your transaction flow is ran by a single thread. And so you have this global block competition to be included in a block. And if there's a lot of Zen mints coming in, basically people are trying to compete for the cheapest gas, but they push the gas above like the nominal condition. And so what happens on Ethereum is that if you're doing swaps for like some meme coins, or you're participating in DeFi, all of a sudden the gas is like very, very high for you, no matter what you do. And so after we saw that, after a couple of months, we just decided to launch on Polygon. And Polygon was a lot less expensive because it runs somewhat different consensus. It's only has 100 nodes, I believe. It's not as decentralized, obviously, as Ethereum. And so what we saw a different problem. We saw that we pretty much killed all of the RPC nodes. Like, the RPC nodes could not handle the onslaught of all of those Zen minters that were coming in, trying to grab as much supply as they could. The other thing I want to mention, that Zen supply is not infinite. It pretty much ends after 8 years, from October 8th, 2022. It has the formula that basically decreases the inflation rewards to you as the time goes by. And actually, I just saw a chart posted where you could see that there's a deflationary or disinflationary curve affecting the release of the tokens. And so after we launched on Polygon, we just decided that maybe it's a good idea to launch on all of the popular EVM chains. And so we launched on Phantom, Binance, Moonbeam, which is the Polkadot ecosystem EVM compatible chain. Also EVMOS, which is the Cosmos compatible EVM chain as well. And there were many others. And they're all listed on Zen.network. You can see them. And that allowed people to basically get into a choice to participate within the ecosystem in a chain that they liked. And obviously, Ethereum mainnet was the most popular one because that's where you could make the most money, but it cost you the most. And so a couple of months ago, the community that have grown quite a bit, which is, I think, over 1 million people right now, they asked to see if we can go to the first non-EVM chain, which was basically Solana. And so we took what we learned from the rest of the EVM universe out there and designed a system that allows for mining of Zen on Solana that's called SolZen, which is basically running, because Solana does not have the Nakamoto consensus single threading that's actually ends up doing a global auction for all of the transactions. They actually have the local fee markets. What we decided to do is not to create a contract that competes on the fees, because the fee is going to be kind of low anyway. So what we did instead, we designed the contract for the users to compete on the compute units. And so in Solana, the block space is measured in a couple of things. And one of those most important elements is CU, or compute units. There's about 48 million of the units there per block. Every block ends up being produced every 400 milliseconds. And so the contract that we call SolZen, that you can find more details on solzen.io, runs a calculation to find a hash with a particular target on the validator itself. And specifically, in Solana speak, it would be a leader that's currently taking transactions. So that leader will receive your transaction, execute a search for a target within a cryptographic hash that's currently running CASAC256, which is like one of the common hashing algorithms. If you find the target, you get a reward. If you don't find the target, well, better luck next time. You run another transaction, like you can run a bot or you can just click a button. Point is that the hashing algorithm actually takes quite a bit of CU, and this CU is the difficulty. So like CU is limited to 48 million, and you cannot have more than 48, and you end up competing with the rest of the ecosystem to mine SolZen on Solana, similar to how you're mining Zen on EVM ecosystem. And so that's kind of like where we are today.
Yeah, so one of the things I got really excited about, there's a lot of things that I like about your project, but one of them is just like how huge your community is and how small your team is. How many people are on the team?
So it's myself and 3 other people currently.
So 4 people built a 1 million person community and a token that is one of the top used tokens on Ethereum. I mean, if we just share this screen, where is this thing? We're going to pull up that Etherscan. What are we seeing here?
So this is the today's snapshot of Etherscan. You can go to etherscan.io, go to resources, top stats, and they have the link to the top tokens by the total uniques. In this particular case, total uniques are the number of addresses that are currently holding Zen in their wallets. And this number, 175,000, basically is the number of wallets of the total holders. If you go to Zen contract on the Etherscan and click on it and go to holders view, you will see 175,000 holders of Zen. And the reason why there's so much is because, well, it is basically free crypto. Nobody's selling it to you. You're using the blockchain itself to generate it, which is very unique in the smart contract world, because usually there aren't really that many fair launches. Fair launch meaning that somebody does not actually pre-mint, pre-mines the assets and then sells it to you as if it's an ICO or makes the market for you by having some sort of like a liquidity pool that sells to you. Here, there's no sellers. You're making the crypto yourself, and then you can make the market yourself. If there's buyers, well, you can make profit. If there's no buyers, you can hold on to it. You can also stake it for yield. There's like a way to do it where you get like 15% per year. So it's kind of like true DeFi, borrowing the conceptual elements of Bitcoin implemented in the smart contract. And so we have been the number 3 token on Ethereum for the last 2 years, next to USDT and USDC. So USDT and USDC is kind of like the funnel tokens where ultimately people end up holding a lot of money there, and they're using it as a transitional cryptocurrency to move between tokens, right? So like there's a lot of pairs between USDT and USDC, and so Zen happens to be the number 3 just because it's really capturing this sort of desire of the people to get into the project fairly and to produce this cryptocurrency similar to how you have done with Bitcoin. So anyway, for anybody out there who did not get a chance to get into Bitcoin, this is your chance to make crypto for yourself, as if you step into a time machine and mining Bitcoin back in 2010.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And because it's open source, I mean, you guys have had a lot of other people contribute to it and do things with it, right? I mean, and that's been part of your growth strategy. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, so community is pretty large, and a lot of people are actually contributing the resources, whether they're running the dashboards or some sort of like analytics software element. So for example, zen.pub is this giant resource that's pulling data from all of the Zen related projects, presenting charts and data tables where you can learn more and glimpse into the activity of the Zen universe. And there's like one guy, in Canada that just like loves data engineering and loves just getting things polished so that it could be visualized on the web page. And so that's basically the website right there that we're looking at. And that's just like one of them. Yeah. There's another one called Zen Turbo .io, I believe, or maybe it's .com, I forget. And so ultimately, because this crypto literally, your own, you made it by yourself. Nobody sold it to you. There's no the sort of feeling that the founding team should be doing everything because it is a common cryptocurrency. Everybody kind of holds it. They can get into it by developing interesting tools and various things. So it's basically like an ecosystem, similar to how you would launch a blockchain effectively. If you launch a blockchain, obviously your thesis would be is publicly accessible decentralized platform where anybody can build together. And so that's what Zen is today, except in a smart contract that kind of like belongs to the people.
Just build together. That is actually the why of ABK Labs. That's like our
Yeah.
tagline, because we believe open source is the purest form of innovation. And I think your approach is really incredible and a great example for other people. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show. Can you talk a little bit, like, let's get into like the SVM piece of this a little bit more. You guys launched onto the Solana mainnet, and then now you're working on this thing called XEN. What is XEN, and how did you get to the idea to even work? What was the inspiration to actually build your own L1?
So it actually basically community inspired project, just like Zen was. So Zen was community inspired because I was just doing streams with the Hexagon community, hex.com. That was the people that got me into streaming with them, and that community that was just like commenting on my stream saying when's a new token launch or something like that, which I thought was always like a joke. But then I thought about it seriously, and I said, well, if community wants a token, we should like do something. But it really should be following first principles, because there isn't enough of the like pure crypto projects that follow the core innovation of Bitcoin. And so with X1, which is our blockchain that's currently in the works, community also asked to get the platform off the ground, where the idea is that you have all the Zen ecosystems out there across different blockchains, and we want to actually have those people given a choice to upgrade their Zen tokens to X1 native cryptocurrency. And that's like one of the most organic ways to onboard a very, very large million people community into a blockchain without hyping the blockchain first, if you know what I will. What I mean. So there's a lot of blockchains out there that raise a lot of money, and they're like, hey, we're gonna give everybody dollars, just come. And most of those projects they pump earlier due to some sort of like narrative that's getting wind. And then when the VCs dump, well, the chart will end up looking like Celestia. So like if we look at Celestia chart, before Ethereum got their blobs out, Celestia was pumping, and I think it was like above $10. Now it's back to $2, and that's because like there aren't really that many people on Celestia or on Aptos, for example. So like Aptos has really, really cool innovations behind their technology, but they really don't have community. And so what we're doing with X1, we're kind of like approaching it in reverse. We have this large group of holders of Zen assets that we want to give a path towards X1 and bring everybody together across this one relatively large platform that can basically consolidate everybody in. And of course, that is not enforced. Like if you want to stay on Ethereum, if you want to stay on Phantom or Binance or Polygon, by all means stay there. But we want people to have an option to go into X1 through the paths that we'll be creating across all those chains.
So you've got this huge community. They were like, when token? And at first you rejected that idea, and then you were like, well, maybe we should give them the token. But like there was this story you told me last time we talked about, like you posted some video to Twitter of some, you were like hacking on the validator code or something, and you posted a video of it. Can you talk about that?
Was that the Solana
Yeah.
node?
Yeah.
And so anyway, as Zen landed in all those chains, it literally pushed all those chains to the limit. So Ethereum's gas just went through the roof, and Ethereum turned deflationary from October 8th, 2022. Polygon's RPC servers died. Binance just got stuck. Nobody could transact on Binance. And there were a couple of chains where they just actually started to censor Zen contract, exposing themselves not being decentralized. So the community, quote unquote, decided that Zen is bad. And ETHMOS is one of those examples. They basically said that, look, your community came to ETHMOS and you took all of the block space. There's nothing else that exists now except Zen on ETHMOS, and we really like to give capacity to the rest of the builders, which I kind of get. But the problem is that they have initially underpriced the block space, and so Zen obviously came and ate it all. And so should they have done a better economic design, it would not have happened, and maybe their validators would have gotten paid through either burn or some sort of like other feature. But anyway, so ETHMOS basically now censoring Zen. And so looking at this whole EVM ecosystem, we thought that, well, definitely we could maybe make a better EVM. And so we decided to work with Phantom codebase. And as we worked with it, we actually pushed the TPS to about 9,000, which is pretty great. I don't think there's like any EVMs out there. Maybe Monad will have like 10,000. But we pushed the Phantom's TPS to about 9,000. But then, like, I kept thinking, if I were to tell anybody, tell my friends, hey, we have this really, really fast EVM, it's 9,000 TPS, somebody would ask, well, what about Solana? They're like doing a lot more than that, or could do a lot more than that, like 65,000. That's what the marketing material from Solana was indicating. And so I thought that, well, at the very least, they deserve a much deeper look into the code and into the architecture to see, can we learn something from SVM that we can implement in our EVM chain, which was like the Phantom fork at the time. And as I looked at it, I ran a benchmark on the Solana SVM node, and I actually did achieve 65,000 TPS pretty much day one. So for the naysayers out there that it's all not true, it actually is true. It can do 65,000 TPS on a beefy server straight out of the box. Whether the cost of the servers lead to centralization, that's like another topic we can get into. But for me, as a code monkey, I just thought that, well, hey, this is actually pretty great that you can do that many transactions per second. And so what I decided to do is I decided to tweak the node to actually run a little bit faster. And one morning, I just like discovered a way to rearrange the way that the transaction scheduler works, and I ended up pushing it to about 100,000 TPS. And so I published those results on Twitter, on X, where I basically said that, by the way, here's like a demo of an SVM that's doing 100,000 TPS. So like all of the haters out there, I actually have the data that I can back up with the real actionable code. And I think Toli responded looking at it, and he asked me like a bunch of technical questions. We had a conversation, and then I think that conversation ended. He's like, hey, you guys really should like fork an SVM code base and run a public testnet, like to implement all of those things that you're adding and have people play with it. And that's like great for the SVM ecosystem, which I like totally was on board with to do. So we decided basically to stop the development of the EVM. And actually what didn't help with Phantom is that they have switched to a different consensus algorithm called Sonic, which they have had the portion of the code actually closed source. And I'm a big proponent of open source. Like I hate when people close source, because like what Phantom is doing, they have forked an EVM, which is open sourced by Ethereum Foundation, but then they're adding other things that you cannot actually use unless you're working with Phantom directly. So you cannot actually innovate on anything that they have produced. And so that was like a big downer and definitely caused us to shift gears towards like alternatives. And Solana was like right there with 100,000 TPS with juiced up node. And I thought that, okay, well, definitely maybe we should just like do a testnet and get the community to run the validators. And so like currently we have about 60 nodes running. The website is x1val.online, and if you share them, bring it up, you can actually see the network is functioning. It has some minor tweaks. The scheduler works a little bit faster for transactions, so it's a tiny bit faster than Solana due to the code changes, as well as the fact that there isn't any meme coins and there's no pump.fun on
Yeah,
X1, and
that helps.
therefore you actually get faster throughput just because
Some
of
dev
that.
out there right now is starting to hack on the next one, pump.fun for sure.
Yeah, and they should.
Get ready.
We obviously welcome that.
I don't know if this is the
So
website you wanted me to show, but this is got some data on it.
that's
Yeah, I think this
Zamblock.
is.
That's
What was the
the
what was the which what was the one you wanted me to show just now? It was X.
X1 val, one word, X1 VAL dot
Yep.
online. So
There we go. Did it come up? Hold on.
nope,
This is it. Right here.
right here.
X1
Yeah.
nodes.
Yeah,
go.
so you can see they're actually switching, and on like where your mouse is, that's where the blocks are being produced, and you can see
Yeah,
like the
right
block
here.
latency production. So it's a real network with real community nodes running it. We run like one or two nodes ourselves, but the rest like belong to our technical group,
Yep.
and they're running across the world, and some people are launching interesting projects on it, and we're continuing to test basically. So that's
And it's in testnet
the
phase right now.
yeah. So that's basically a test net, public test net. You can get in, get an airdrop, start kicking the tires, and like compare it to Solana. But it's fully compatible with the SVM and Rust uh, ecosystem out there. So anything that you can run on Solana, you can redeploy and test on X1.
I really love your project because of the open source ethos. It's one of the biggest things that resonated with me when we first talked, and it's the reason I came to Solana in the first place. Like Tolly's attitude of "Hey, fork this and make it better," is like building together with other people to improve, and having that purity in innovation is what gets me out of the bed in the morning.
Yeah, that's super
So
great. I totally agree. And it also like I think acts as a anti-maxi kind of like detect. Like basically, if you're a maxi and you're afraid and you don't want anybody to do anything,
right.
well, where's the innovation going to come from? So
Yeah.
I think a lot of
And
people
you guys have already contributed to Solana, right? Like to the actually like upstream. I know we talked about that at the beginning of the show. I don't know if you can talk about it publicly, but you know, can you talk about that? I don't know if Anza wants you to do
sure.
that or not.
So like obviously like Solana guys have spent like hundreds of thousands of hours on the code base, and kudos to them for actually producing something that's relatively easy to work with. It's written in Rust. Documentation is excellent, and so like my personal interest is optimization. So I come from Google, and when I was hired in Google in 1999, Google had like 20 employees. The founders like told me like, hey, your job is to make Google run faster. And I was 24 at the time. I actually was learning on the go, and Google was running faster like within 6 months, because that was like my 100% focus on optimizing the search engine and optimizing the infrastructure behind it. And so I kind of approached SVM code base and like in Solana with the same kind of like lens. And so I thought that, okay, so I'm running a node and there's no traffic to the node. Where do I see bottlenecks, if any? And so I immediately saw that the voting handling threads were running hot, even though there was no voting coming in from other nodes, because it just was a single node. And so as I engaged the Anza team, they were pointed me to a piece of code, asking me to take a look at it, where I saw an infinite loop running, waiting for work. So basically, it was a consumer loop that's just like was eating up resources, waiting for work to do. But while it was waiting, it was just like spinning so hard, it was eating the CPU of the server. And so I introduced kind kind of like a logic gate into that code, and immediately the threads unloaded, and the server actually uh, became more quiescent, able to receive votes and process those votes without extra waiting for the CPU to be capable to do it. And so I pushed those changes as a PR to the Solana guys, and they actually found a bigger problem behind it. And I believe now they have fixed it. So in the new code version is going to be ANSA 2.0, which will have the fix that will actually allow the servers to synchronize and run voting consensus much faster and better.
Yeah, and
And
this
so
is
I
why I'm
published
so
all of
excited
it.
about the SVM space, like this alt SVM space, these network extensions that people are building, is because eventually the good stuff, the good ideas that come out of that come upstream. As long as you're building open source. I mean, I actually don't know what the validator code base is licensed under, but
It's
if you're
GPL.
working on it, yeah, okay, so it's GPL. So anything you contribute to that has to be open sourced in the future because it's GPL license.
Yeah,
which is
and I
what we
think
want. So
that's the way to do it. I mean, like we're looking at the creation of Linux, and I was a Linux
yeah,
user from version 0.83b, which wasn't even like version 1 yet. And there were so many contributors in like back then we used net news or forums just basically to share like our insights, and together like as we actually have built something amazing that now
yeah,
powers internet as a whole, which is just incredible.
yeah. Yeah, I'm lucky to have met my business partner early in my career, Brian Fox. I told you about. He's one of the co-authors of the GPL license and wrote Bash back in the day. But he was like friends with Linus Torvald when they created Linux, and it started out with just a handful of devs in a room trying to solve some problems, building open source, and then today it's like billions of dollars in enterprise value and powers like everything, even on different planets in outer space. Like, I don't know how you can't. My point of bringing up that story is you don't see the legacy you're building at the time. But open source software to me is a legacy that you're leaving to the world. And I think Solana, what I'm really excited to see is all these, Anza and a bunch of other teams, including my team, ABK Labs, like modularizing the validator code base, because I think it's going to enable what happened with Linux to happen with Solana, right? More and more people will be able to contribute because they'll be easier to like break apart the different functionality and work on little parts of the code base for these optimizations that you guys did. So like what's next for you guys? What's happening next?
Well, I think what's happening next is definitely the launch of the AlphaNet, and then AlphaNet is the next iteration of our testnet that we're running. And there, well, obviously, what we want to do is integrate our Zen ecosystem so that people can actually get onboarded into this like sort of like AlphaNet system. And I believe it's going to launch actually without having any liquidity on any market. So you can get your tokens; they're not going to be worth anything. But that's like one way to launch a system fairly, where like you actually don't end up getting like this giant pump the first month and then a dump because there's no ecosystem yet. So we're going to launch our ecosystem and basically provide inroads for all of the Zen holders, as well as the GPU miners that we're currently running with Zen blocks, as well as we're thinking to do cross-chain eigenlayer like restaking from Solana to XEN and Ethereum as well. So you should be able to take your Ethereum, stake it in a smart contract on Ethereum, and then get the wrapped Ethereum on XEN that you can also restake into the validator set and earn yield. So basically eigenlayer, but across SVM, EVM chains, basically.
So I think like you guys check all the boxes for me as far as contributing back to Solana. You're open source. You've already made contributions back to the core. You're a permissionless network, so validators can join who already have experience operating Solana nodes and earn more money. And you're enabling restaking, which gets people who hold Sol more yield as well. Which I think you're just like, this is definitely a good example of an alt SVM chain that is going to be a really big net positive for Solana as a whole. So really excited to see you guys building it.
Well, I think we have like a million people in the EVM ecosystem that we really want
Yeah,
to
you're
get.
bringing them over
Yeah,
too.
well, yeah, and it is a good thing because Ethereum is getting fragmented, and maybe fragmentation is the future, but I kind of like see it as a push away from the original decentralization vision from Vitalik. So like Ethereum used to be like, really good asset and like kind of like a store of value, and also an investment towards the future of sharded Ethereum, right? And so what happened is with the introduction of blobs and introduction of like so many L2s out there, basically what happened is that everybody left Ethereum. That's why gas is so low. And those L2s, they're not really technically decentralized yet, though I think there's hope that they will become. But like at this point, I think the really good reason to be in Solana is because of its monolithic nature and being a pure L1 that actually can't scale. Where Ethereum basically feels to me like they're throwing a bag and saying like, okay, well, we're not gonna scale the mainnet. We're just gonna make it into a settlement layer, and everybody else can build the app chains that are really not the chains. They're just like basically servers that don't have consensus. They just have the sequences running that will settle on Ethereum, and basically feels to me like Ethereum is being sold short by the foundation itself, where Solana continues to innovate in the L1 monolithic space, which I really like because it actually follows the kind of this decentralization paradigm.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I think yeah. So we're getting towards like the top of the show here, and I ask people the same thing at the end of these things. But what have I not asked you that you wanted to share with people who are watching?
Is that a question to me? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. What have we not talked about that we should have covered?
So we haven't
How
talked about I think Zenblocks. So Zenblocks was
is
launched
there?
as this like a weekend project about a year ago, and it's coming up on a year literally just in a couple of days. And basically, I wanted to experiment with non-SHA-2, yeah, that thing, non-SHA-2 or non-SHA-256 related algorithms, and so I found Argon 2, which is a memory hard algorithm that also produces hashes, or rather, it is a one-way hash similar to Kazakh and SHA. But because it's memory hard, it cannot be gamed by ASICs. Like ASICs do not have a lot of memory on them, and that's like what makes them so fast to do algorithms like SHA, because SHA like doesn't really take much RAM at all. So this one is actually memory hard, and it brings in more fairness towards the miners of the cryptocurrency. And so that like literally launched as a research project, but it has gathered over 2,000 GPUs.
Wow.
And so currently they're running and producing hashes. They're mining Zen blocks, and we thought, well, wait a second. We could actually use that portion of the ecosystem to secure X1's kind of like the monetary layer, or the economic security can be brought from the fact that the nodes, the mining Zen blocks, are actually spending their fiat on getting the miners that produce the hashes. And so by definition, XNM, and that's what we call the token that is producing, it's called Zenium. So it's kind of like, you know, similar to Ethereum, but it has Zen in it, so Zenium, right? But it also like kind of like feels it belongs to a periodic table. And so Zenium is worth the effort you have spent doing proof of work with your GPUs out there, because you have paid for the compute. And so you're loading this compute into this token, and that token will be liquid on X1 and will bring in more economic energy to the chain when it's live. So what we have is like several ways in. We have the Zen blocks, which is the proof of work component feeding the chain with the economic energy. We have the eigenlayers restaking, which allows the ability to leverage your stakeable assets on other chains on X1. And we have the Zen ecosystem that can also get into X1 by converting your Zen assets through a burn or maybe a stake or whatever else, and have basically that like a third way to feed X1 with the users.
Well, Jack, I really appreciate being on the show and sharing your story. Last thing I think we can end on is just how can people contribute and get involved?
So like find me on Twitter actually, or X. I actually do respond to my DMs, and also I do post links to our Telegram channels. If you're interested in running a node and learning more about SVM, join our validator knowledge group. There's about 2,000 people there, and any time during the week, like every day, there's like 300 people out there that can respond to questions. There's a lot of guides and videos that we have published so far, so you should maybe find X1 explainers from this channel called Zenducation. So that's like one of our guys producing Zenducation, and there you can learn how to start your first program on within the SVM environment, how to learn Rust, how to get into the playground. Also, if you're interested in just running a node and doing, receiving delegations from like the other community members for your node, there's a video explainer how to do that. And so there's a lot of content out there. I think zencrypto.io is a news site that actually has, or it's kind of like a collection of blogs that explains everything what we've been up to for like the last 2 years. So yeah, like there's a lot of data out there. Just type in like Zen into Twitter, and you'll find everything.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. It was super fun.